Yeah, they're basically repeating that. It is definitely much nicer to walk to school today than yesterday. Two crossing guards and a parent actually told me that the cars are going a little bit slower today, which is nice because they have to. The roads are icier. They were lamenting that yesterday, even though it was snowing and there was slush in the roads, they just were going too fast. They weren't slowing down even in the school zone. And the school, expects much higher attendance today. A little more than half the students came yesterday, which is better, by the way, than the citywide average. But today should be good. It's a nice day. It's a nice morning so far. And it is Valentine's Day, by the way. I see lots of kids walking in with their bags.
You got to go to school to get your Valentine.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, their Valentines and their chocolates.
WNYC's Yasmin Khan. Thanks so much, Yasmin.
Thank you.
Alternate side parking rules are suspended today through Monday, but you do have to speed those meters. Mostly sunny and windy today, getting up to 36 degrees. It is going to be slushy and slick out there, though. And for the weekend, it looks like a little more snow for tomorrow, maybe 1 to 2 inches accumulating with a high in the mid-30s. Sunday, just mostly cloudy with highs in the upper 20s. Right now, it's 34 degrees, feels like 24. We have mostly sunny skies. WNYC at 8:36.
Support for NPR comes from Newman's Own Foundation, giving all profits from Newman's Own to charity and pursuing the common good for over 30 years.
The number of homeless people in New York is higher than it's been since what's considered modern homelessness began in the 1970s. But with a new mayor in office, many who live in the shelters and their advocates see better days ahead. WNYC's Merla Ivorek has more.
On a bitterly cold day, standing in front of a shelter in East New York, 40-year-old Cicely had a message for Mayor de Blasio.
Let's make a change. It's time to make a change because I think it's unfair that the shelter system is so crowded. People is living in these things crowded and clumped in.
Cicely, who didn't want her last name used, is among the people who entered the shelter system during Mayor Bloomberg's tenure. During that time, the number of the city's homeless increased by 70%, reaching a record high of over 53,000, according to the Coalition for the Homeless, an advocacy group. Mayor de Blasio hasn't shied away from faulting the Bloomberg administration for this situation.
We have the highest number of people in shelter in the history of this city, the highest number in a city-run shelter system ever, the highest number of people who are homeless in any sense, literally since the Great Depression. And it simply can't continue. So we will address the problems of the shelter system, and we will take a very different approach.
If you ask Cicely what that approach should be, she says it's bringing back a rental subsidy like the one she had for 2 years. It allowed her to rent a home in Staten Island.
If we give programs, make it a place where they supply half the rent and we supply the other, like we're able to save up enough money to meet the match of the money.
The Bloomberg administration canceled the subsidy Cicely had in 2011 after losing the state and federal funding needed to run it. So far, half of all families who had the subsidy have returned to the shelters. Mayor de Blasio is working with Governor Cuomo to reinstate a subsidy of that kind. He also plans to bring back priority referrals for public housing and Section 8 vouchers, which sits well with some shelter residents.
They need to bring Section 8 back out, and they really do.
Pamela Coley is staying at a shelter in Harlem with her 23-year-old son.
I hope our new mayor do something. Give us a voucher, so we all can get up out of here. I mean, at least for me. This is not home.
All the changes de Blasio plans to make were a part of the Bloomberg administration's homeless policy at one point. Next to losing funding, another reason the administration decided to eliminate them was to disincentivize people from entering the shelter system to get rental subsidies or avoid long wait lists for public housing apartments. Some experts still worry that bringing back those policies could have that effect.
There was a reason that the previous administration thought there was some reason for concern.
Howard Husuk is the vice president for policy research at the Manhattan Institute.
We have to be careful that we're not going to create incentives for some to try to, in effect, jump the line, despite the fact that their situation may be no different than many thousands of others.
Advocates, on the other hand, are delighted with the proposed changes.
It's a total sea change from the previous administration. I mean, by the time, obviously, 12 years later...
After fighting bitterly with Bloomberg, and before him with Mayors Giuliani and Koch, Mary Brosnahan, the president and CEO of the Coalition for the Homeless, describes interactions with the new administration like this.
It's a whole different era at City Hall.
She and her colleague Patrick Markey seem to have a sense they've moved from having an adversary in the mayor to having a partner.
We as advocates and other advocates and service providers and other not-for-profit organizations are just anxious to work with him to tackle these enormous problems that we have.
In a year, he says, he expects to see the number of homeless people begin to decline. For WNYC, I'm Morella Ibrek.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Renee Montaigne. Syrian peace talks are continuing in Geneva today, just barely. Several times this week, a delegation from Syrian President